Great, we've got some attendees coming through. That's great to see. Welcome. My name's Phil. Welcome to the Product Roadmap webinar. We're very excited to have you all joining us. We'll go through some introductions in a sec, but what we thought could be fun, if you see the chat at the bottom of your screen, if you want to tell us where you're from, how long you've been using AgriWebb. We've got a lot of customers. We can see 65 folks have joined already, which is really exciting. So just while we wait for a few more people to come in, if you want to pop some of those, some things in there, like we said, where you're from and how long you've been using AgriWebb, that'd be great. And we'll just give it one more minute and then we'll get kicked off. I'm just going to share my screen now. And if I just get a thumbs up from someone if they can see the screen. So great, thanks, Stacey. Excellent, great to see some familiar names coming in there. Awesome. Okay, well, we might start to get in here. And again, if for anyone who's joined, we've just asked folks to let us know where you're from and how long you've been using AgriWebb for. There's a whole bunch of things we want to get through today, and this is the first product roadmap webinar we've done ever. So very excited, a little bit of butterflies maybe in my stomach or some of our stomachs here. What we're going to step through today are some recent updates to let people know things that have been coming out from the product. We'll then step through a little bit about what we're trying to achieve at AgriWebb and talk about our product strategy, step through some of the features that you'll be seeing coming out on the mob system soon. And then Stacey will take us through a little bit of what the next few months look like from a roadmap point of view. And then we have Hamish from the support team here as well, who'll go through some top tips that we've seen customers really get a lot of value out of. But just starting with some and ending with some Q&A. If you do have any questions, please feel free to pop them into the chat as well. We'll continue to kind of keep an eye on that. We may answer those at the end of the different sections we're going through, but if there's some quick ones, we'll call them out. And we will have some time at the end to go through Q&A as well. In terms of who we are, we have a few folks from the product team. So these are the team that kind of define the product and how it looks like. We've got a team of 10 people in the product team, which is really, we've seen a lot of growth there, in addition to our team of 17 developers. So lots of people and lots of effort goes into building AgriWebb. My name's Phil Chan. I'm the Chief Product Officer here at AgriWebb. I've been with the group for just on 8 years now. So we'll talk about some of the ways which we've been developing and evolving the products over time. Stacey, who's our lead product manager, is also joining. Jess Ship, one of our product managers, who I'm sure many of you will have seen her messages about recent releases and releases popping up in the app. And if you haven't spoken to Hamish Sinclair on the support lines, he's one of our senior support coordinators. And just as we get kicked off, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. In my case, it's the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay our respects to elders past, present, and future. And now I'm going to hand over to Jess.
Perfect. Thanks, Phil. Hi, everyone. So I'm just going to run you through some of the recent updates that we've made over the last few months, just in case you missed them, and go into a little bit of detail around that. So first up, on the next slide, Phil, these are just some numbers of kind of from fixes to mobile app releases and web app releases that represent all of the work that's been done over the last 12 months. So while it's definitely quality over quantity, these numbers do represent the fact that we kind of are releasing and updating the product all of the time and always taking on the feedback that you guys are providing. And yeah, it shows that there's lots of things changing in AgriWebb all the time. So first up, the farm calendar is one of the big updates that we made towards the start of the year, and hope that everyone, if you're a customer on the call, has had a chance to play around with the calendar both on the web and the mobile app. So the calendar is really your visual tool for activity across your farm. So you can view your individual livestock records, tasks, farm notes, and rainfall. The mob livestock records will be coming up. This is called out in the roadmap section a bit later. It's a great place to start your day, seeing any of the tasks that you have for the day or week coming up. You can visualize your historical events and anything that your team or anyone else on farm is doing, and kind of just get that holistic view. It's also really helpful, particularly on the web side of things, to plan into the future. So using your tasks and farm notes to create future events and plan things ahead of time. Secondly, I wanted to call out a few updates that we've made to settings. So Hamish is going to touch on these a little bit later, but just to call out, firstly, the single species settings. So you can access this on the web. So if you go into your farm level settings, then you can see these ones there. But in a nutshell, this is for cattle only or sheep only producers who want a simpler experience in AgriWebb. So essentially it just means that it's a simpler interface. It's easier to digest information because you're not kind of seeing irrelevant things for other species that don't mean anything to your operation. So just really streamlining and making it simpler to do your record keeping. A bit of an extension on this one is favorite breeds. So this is something that similar to the species, you can basically make it relevant to what you've got going on farm. So you can essentially create a short list of your farm breeds. And that means that, when you're adding in the mobs or individuals and purchasing in stock or marking animals post lambing and calving, you don't have to scroll through, the hundreds of agro breeds that we have in the system. You can just see the handful that you have on farm, just speed up that process. Another update that we made a couple of months ago was around mob creation. So again, really focused on simplifying this for you, removing the need to kind of put in irrelevant information or too much detail that maybe doesn't mean too much to you. So a few things to kind of call out on this is, firstly, the flexible date of birth. So this really means for mob management users, you can choose a year or month accuracy, so making it more relevant to your mobs. You can also assign new mobs to multiple paddocks. So say you've got a few hundred of a particular age class, you can add these in and then split them out across multiple paddocks. So you can do that in one action rather than having to create multiple different records. And we've also made purchase details optional as well. So again, just having that flexibility around the level of detail that you need to record. Contact management. So this is a very recent update that we released only a week or so ago. So you might not have seen this one yet, but really this is around helping speed up record keeping again. So instead of having to, look up your details of buyers, including, their PIC number every time, you can just add your contacts in. So you can go into web settings again and add in a list of all of your contacts in there, and then you'll have them available to select from when record keeping on both the web and the mobile app. And you can also create contacts on the go as well if you have a new one that comes up. So the marketplace, which we launched at the start of the year, which I'm sure a lot of people heard about at the time. So we know that kind of you're using a range of tools on farm and continuing to kind of digitize different aspects of your business. So we wanted to have a place where you could access kind of all of these tools all in one place. So integrating with existing tools that you might already have subscriptions for, or finding new ones. So at the moment in the marketplace, we've got kind of grass management, water monitoring solutions, individual animal hardware for EIDs. So again, you can access this through the web, the desktop portal, and go into the account section. And Stacey will talk a little bit later about some of the future pieces for the marketplace coming up. And just to touch on a couple of examples of the integrations that we have. So firstly, on the satellite pasture management. So if you haven't heard of SIBO Labs, SIBO provides objective grass measurements across your property every 5 days. So with this integration, essentially, this means that your feed on offer estimates are brought directly into AgriWebb and overlaid, you can see on that image on your farm map, so that you can essentially make better grazing decisions for each of your paddocks. And the second one I wanted to call out was the water management. So we've got a few different providers in the marketplace, so it's worth checking that out. But one example is FarmBot. So this is really streamlining your rainfall and your water systems. So for example, your tank sensors, which automatically updates the levels in AgriWebb so that you can access that through the farm map by clicking on your tank. And similarly for rain gauges, it brings through your rainfall records automatically. And these water integrations will continue to be more and more valuable if this rain continues to hold off. And finally, just a couple of smaller ones that I wanted to mention. So as I said at the start, we are continually releasing fixes and improvements in AgriWebb, and some of them kind of may seem small, but really are based on all of the feedback from users like all of you on the call. So a couple of examples to call out is updating the mob age class. So this now allows you to edit your lambs to ram lambs or ram weaners when you're sexing animals, or your bull weaners to steers if you're castrating. And the second one on the right there, we've just updated the sale record to better reflect the sale date. So understanding that, the departure date and contract date can be different. So really just trying to speed up the record keeping for you on that side. So that's kind of all of the updates I wanted to run through today. And you should shortly see a poll up on your screen asking you about how you'd like to get informed about some of these updates. So we do try and share in various different ways. So we'd love to hear kind of your preference on how you'd like to hear about them, what makes sense for you. And if you can't see your option on there, feel free to select other or message in the chat what you think would be most helpful for you. So seeing lots of votes on email, which is a good one.
Awesome. We'll leave that chat running for a little bit. And sorry, that poll, I just wanted to call out as well. And Terry, we will answer your questions towards the end of the session, but there's also a Q&A tab if folks want to use that as well as, or in addition to the chat for popping questions in, and then we can see those coming through and answer them live as well. Excellent. So yeah, really, thank you for answering that poll. Really strong showing for email, as well as those sort of product notifications still coming through. So that's wonderful to see. Thank you for that. And now, so Jess has done, has kind of talked about recent things that have come out. I just wanted to take you all through a little bit of how we think about what it is we're trying to do at AgriWebb, and talk a bit about our product strategy and and then step into some of the broader initiatives that we're running throughout the moment, a bit of the longer term initiatives as well. So a slide like this is one that a lot of ag tech companies have, and they really frame the problem that we're trying to solve as an industry, as an ag tech industry, and that is, how do we feed a growing population without using more land and while lowering greenhouse gas emissions? And I saw this almost 8 years ago to the day when first meeting the founders of AgriWebb, and this really inspired me with the types of problems that we could solve together. But they seemed pretty impossible to how a small company based in Sydney could help with that. And so our purpose at AgriWebb is really to empower you guys, the livestock inventory, with the best tools we can to feed the world and achieve those goals in a way that's efficient, profitable, and sustainable. And how we do that is really described in the picture in the background here, which is helping make the transition from pen and paper, where you enter data. It's still data even though you write it down, but you can't necessarily get insights from it. You can't share it with other people, towards the more connected, digitized mobile technology that you'll be familiar with and that we've been working hard to get onto over the last several years. And when we look at the livestock industry, we're really focused on a specific part of that, and that is red meat producers who are running commercial businesses, say, as opposed to studs, with a focus around grazing, a bit more than, say, feedlots, who may be mob or individual, and who really are across doesn't matter how big you are along that continuum. It's really that type of characteristic, those characteristics of a producer that we're looking at this point in time, satisfying, building products for, and that really drives a lot of the decisions that we make in terms of the types of features that go out. It doesn't mean we won't be extending that in the future, particularly around the commercial versus stud side, but we're focusing on this segment have been for the last several years, and will continue to. And what that means in terms of the product is, and how we help that transition from pen and paper to a digital solution, is really through these different steps of the customer journey. And the way we think about that customer journey and how you can adopt more technology, or the right amount of technology on farm, is through these steps, and starting off with the questions that we're helping people answer. They start with, how many animals do I have and where are they? Which we describe as livestock inventory. Maybe compliance and how I can sell my animals through market access. How the farm's running, whether that's across weight performance, fertility, profitability, and ultimately, how can I improve my business? How can I take $1 of input and get 2 kilograms of meat rather than 1 kilogram of meat on the other side from a productivity point of view? The subscription plans and how we package the product is also aligned around these goals. And so we have slightly different names in the different countries, but if we talk about the Australian packaging and offerings, that livestock inventory is what we call essentials. The market access is what we talk about as the compliance package, and performance is straightforward, it's performance. And even though we've been running for 8 years, and that fundamental building block about really understanding how many animals I have, where are they, in an accurate and timely way from livestock inventory, is what everyone needs to start with. We know there are some gaps and some rough edges that we need to continue to polish on that side. And I want to now step through what we've been doing, a lot of it in the background, to help with that and really improve some of the core experiences of working with AgriWebb. And I'll do that by showing some of the messages that we get from yourselves, from our customers, around problems that exist within AgriWebb. Many of you will have met Jack from our sales team. Here's a message that came through around a long-time customer. They've got a lot of mobs, a lot of different age classes, and one of the challenges they have is keeping their DSCs up to date, which is really key for understanding grazing decisions and how much the animals are eating, tying into cost of production, and looking for ways to keep DSE up to date based on age class, on preg status, on other aspects. Here's another question, and Jess went through how we've addressed this recently, but for a long time, bulls, ridiculously, were a different species in AgriWebb, or a different type in AgriWebb than cows and steers and calves. And we used to have to document ways that people could have complex processes, how they could implement complex processes within AgriWebb, particularly around this weaning and marking times, and sometimes even send the support team a message if they wanted to convert the age classes. We're very glad to say we've addressed a lot of this already, but there are another example of some rough edges in AgriWebb. And there's other examples of that as well. How can we set an average weight when you merge mobs? How do we record on on weaning weights or other key milestone weights? How do we track lost animals? How do we record agistment? There's a whole range of issues which we've heard for a long time. And I want to take you through a little bit of a timeline then of what we've been doing to address those. Back in 2014, we started AgriWebb and started with a mob product. We had a lot of feedback around those types of issues we just walked through. We had a lot of ideas internally about how we could make the system easier to use. And when we started working on the individual animal system, which was about 2017 and it launched in 2020, we really designed that from the ground up, including a brand new way of how we even store data in the database to address a lot of those issues from the mob system. It's been a really long path to get some of those core issues solved and how we structure and work with the data. But we're now going through a project called the mob upgrade, and we're essentially rewriting the entire mob system to take advantage of all those improvements we made in the individual animal system. And I'm going to walk through some of those in a little bit. And we're also adding in a new concept to AgriWebb called livestock inventory, which is really the main bit we'll step through here in a bit as well. And all of this is leading towards one of the questions that came up earlier from Julie in the Q&A is, are we working towards mobs and individuals on the same farm? And we absolutely are, and that's something we call unified animal management, or you might hear us say UAM here and there through this presentation. The idea here is mapping to how you guys are actually managing and thinking about your animals. You may have, for instance, individually managed cows. They give birth. You want to track those calves as a mob for a period of time. And then at marking time, put ear tags into those calves, sorry. We want the history of what's happened with that mob of calves to then translate or flow into individually managed calves, which then would make that connection between the mob system and the individual system in a unified way. Or you may have treatments and other husbandry information that you're tracking at an individual level, but you want to do grazing at a mob level, but not be able to not lose data between those two different concerns that you're using AgriWebb to track. There's lots of scenarios that we're working towards with unified animal management, but the key piece that we've been working on for 18 months or so, and it's got a bit more in it, is around this rebuild of the mob system to take advantage of all those improvements from the individual system. And when we think about livestock inventory, that has a lot of connections into the mob system and what we kind of are now thinking more of as the paddock book, but also introduce a new concept. So I just want to walk through a little bit of that as well. And what we mean by livestock inventory is the number of animals that you believe you have on farm and that you're reporting out through things like trading accounts, livestock valuations, livestock schedule in Australia, or other tax documents you need to provide. And this is really something separate from the traditional paddock book in AgriWebb, which is the number of animals you've got in each paddock, which is what we currently track. And the paddock book would get reconciled periodically, whether that's monthly, quarterly, yearly, to align with those livestock inventory numbers that you'd then be reporting out through these different mechanisms. What accurate means is the data reflects what's really happening on farm. And ideally, it's really easy to keep that up to date. So automating a number of the things such as what the weight of animals is based on their expected ADG, what their weight class, what their age class is based on when they get weaned, if they've given birth, etc. And also keeping track of DSEs automatically. And beyond the animals, those properties of the animals themselves, how do we keep track of lost animals when you find them again? And agistment, whether that's on farm or off farm. And there's a number of ways to track these things at the moment, but typically with workarounds. And so we want to eliminate the need for all those workarounds as well. Examples of those are ghost paddocks, or paddocks with 0 hectares for tracking overs and unders. Similarly, using ghost paddocks for tracking agistment. The worst one, calling up support to manually update data or even to delete data. And so we're looking for ways that we can address those issues, and it comes down to this new concept of livestock inventory separate to the paddock book and also separate to the stock rec, which is kind of a reconciliation or sums around how the paddock book numbers are getting resolved. Have that ability to reconcile, recount, give explanations for where there are differences between the paddock book and the livestock inventory, automate multiple parts of keeping track of animals so you don't have that overhead that's currently there in the mob system. And also the livestock inventory is something that we recognize is, it should be across the entire organization, probably one of the first of our core multi-farm reports that will come out as well. And so just, back to this timeline, it's a lot of work to rebuild the mob system and then to introduce the livestock inventory concept. So we're continuing to make updates and have releases around that, which we'll step through a bit more in the roadmap in a sec. But what I wanted to do now was, as we've built a number of these items in the individual system already, for folks that haven't seen that and are still or only using the mob system, just wanted to step through what some of those concrete things look like so you can get a flavor of what's coming. And there's many more things in addition to that we'll be bringing out. So I'll just switch over to my farm here, and I'm going to start with a demo farm of the mob system. And the map is really the core experience. We think of it as like the heart of AgriWebb. And when we're looking at livestock and we're drilled in at zoomed in at this type of level, it's pretty easy to see what's going on. But as we zoom out, this is an example where it's less and less understandable what's going on and really becomes pretty useless at this level. One of the first things we wanted to do with the individual system is, first of all, you'll notice these mob markers are a little different, but as we zoom out, they group or they cluster together so that you can see what's happening without getting overwhelmed about how many animals are on that particular farm. So a small thing there, but these mob markers and the way we work with the map also allows us to expose different types of groupings and be a bit more dynamic. So I'll use this button up here and click on something called management groups, which are really a way of categorizing and organizing your animals. The management group really defines animals of the same type that are getting managed in the same way at the same point in time, which I'll explain a little bit more in a sec. But if we select this group, then we can start to see how the animals in that mob are broken down kind of into mobs in a more dynamic way than is there at the moment. And that concept of management groups really sits under something that we call enterprises. And these are the kind of lines of business that you've got running on farm. On this particular farm, we've got backgrounding and breeding feedlot operations across our cattle. We've also got a commercial breeding operation with sheep. And these sections below the management groups, as I said, define sets of animals or sets of mobs within that enterprise that we might want to track, report on, look at the financials across separately. I'm going to drill into this trading enterprise and walk through some of the capabilities that have come into that system. And the first thing we'll see is within this animal list, we have in line with how we can update information and have automatic properties coming across. We can see here we last weighed these animals back in the middle of 2021. We can see what the individual weights are. Again, we're looking at an individual system here. But we can also either set as a new type of record what the assumed daily gain would be for those animals, or in this case, we've looked at the last couple of weights for each of these animals and have calculated what the average daily gain is, so that we can see an estimated weight today based on that previous performance. We may want to then, and you'll also notice then that DSE is getting updated automatically based on the weight of those animals. We've got different ways of setting up DSE or animal units. In this case, we're saying it's using a percentage of the body weight. And we've also built out a filtering system, which really allows us to explore the information and start to get towards, I'd call them customizable, if not custom reports. And there's a lot of different properties we're capturing on these animals that we can start to put filters on by. In this case, I'm going to say that I want to see animals between a certain weight using that estimated weight. So how much they should weigh today. And let's just say we go with 440 to 500 kilograms. We'll apply that. And in a really quick way, we've gone from, I think it was 201 animals down to the 50 animals that satisfy that criteria today. And we can even, and when it comes to understanding and exploring information a little bit, tables are a little bit hard. We've tried to get away from being kind of Microsoft Office for farmers and get to things that are more visual, more dynamic. And so we have this insights button up here, which I'll just click on, and we can then get some really quick graphs that allow us to explore and see what's happening with that particular cohort of animals. And one of the ways that we do that is by highlighting what's similar or different between animals. So here we can see there's a fairly nice distribution of estimated live weights for that cohort, but we've got the daily gains are a little bit biased over to these heavier animals. What's going on with these lighter ones? We can group and visualize that by lots of different properties. In this case, we'll look at where the vendor or who the vendor was and quickly get an update to see, even though our bred animals are at the higher level of the live weight, they've got pretty low daily gains. And again, this is using data that's been imported either with a CSV or using AgriWebb directly in the yards and connecting to your Gallagher and TrueTest hardware. So we could select that group of animals, drill into them a little bit further if we want to understand more about what's going on with them. And we could also pop open one of those animal cards or one of those animals and see here some high level information. We can see how they've been gaining weight over time, and then start to make some decisions around how we handle these animals. This is all using individual data at the moment, but these weight insights will also come across to the mob-based system. And I saw a message there from David. It will be possible to add labels. That's another concept that we're adding, but we'll talk about those towards the end of the chat here. One other thing to call out quickly is these filters can be saved and they can be shared with either as a private filter or shared with other people on farm. And so these become a really powerful way to kind of dig in and understand animals a little bit more. And we've applied this filter to a list of animals, but you could think, well, this filter could also get applied to a map, so we could see what particular paddocks those animals are in. So, stepping through, just wanted to give you guys a bit of a feel of the type of things that have already been built as improvements to the individual system and what's now coming to the mob system. Just one final slide wrapping up. Just wanted to, again, loop through, get back to what those major features are that we've been working on that are coming to the mob system. It's really those major key points around mob merging, grouping, introducing drafting, and really reflecting what happens in reality with some of the records. PregScan's an example of that, where We're doing a preg scan. The record at the moment represents that a vet came out, but we also want to draft out and say this mob has singles in it, this draft has empties or twins, etc. Bring all the mob records over to the portal, including drag and drop movements. This organization of animals, including enterprises and management groups that we step through, but also labels, which are dynamic ways to identify animals. Bring in adjustment, weight projections like we just went through, and filters as well. So just a quick poll, and number 2 on poll of let me pull up my screen sharing again. Full screen, sorry. We've stepped through a whole bunch of features just then. We've had lots of requests and feedback about those types of things, but what are some of the ones there that they're interesting and kind of exciting to you guys? And while I can't see the poll right now, has that come up, Amber?
Yeah, it's up, Phil. We're getting lots of votes for automatically update weight, DSE, and age class. Quite a few for all records on the portal as well.
Okay, great. Well, thanks a lot for letting me go through that with you guys. And now I'll hand over to Stacey, who's going to talk about the product roadmap and which of those are coming soon.
Thanks so much, Phil. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Like Phil said, I'm going to talk a little bit about our roadmap, and our roadmap is what we're working on at the moment and what we plan to work on in the next 6 to 12 months. The way I'll talk about the roadmap and the way that we talk about it at AgriWebb is what we're working on now, what we're working on next, and what we're working on later. We don't always know exactly how long things are going to take until we have fully planned them and gotten into all of the details. So that's the way we kind of describe everything that we're going to work on. We do pretty detailed planning every 6 months. So we have a really solid idea of what we're going to be delivering to you in a 6-month period, but we are always reassessing that and looking at what we're working on based on customer feedback and changes in the market. As Jess mentioned, some of the smaller items that she went through are things that we do prioritize based on customer feedback. So if we see something that's really impacting our customers in a negative way, we'll look at our plan and we'll reprioritize and we'll make sure we address that. So Phil, if you just jump over to the next slide, we'll jump into what we're working on right now. So really following on from what Phil's been talking about and what there's been some questions on, we're focusing on improvements to the mob and individual system and looking at how we can make them consistent as we move towards that one unified product where you can use both of those systems together. So one of those key pieces that we're looking at is tagging, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail in a moment, but really looking at how we make tagging easier, more efficient, and to better reflect the way you actually use tags on farm. And we're also working on some new user roles. So we've had a lot of feedback about this across all of our customers. And this is really going to allow you to control your farm data and to open up AgriWebb to more people to really get a lot of value out of it. So the first 2 roles we're looking at are map only and then a map and task only. And from what we've heard, this is going to be great for contractors and new and junior staff. So users that you assign this role to will only see the map or only see map and tasks, depending what role you assign to them. And they won't have any access to any of your records. They won't be able to edit records. They won't be able to create records or see any financial data. So this really gives you flexibility in giving more people access to AgriWebb, being able to really utilize that farm map for people coming onto your property so they can see gates, paddocks, navigate their way around the farm without having to give them access to all of your AgriWebb and worry, about the integrity of your data or that someone might make an error and compromise that. Phil, if you just jump over to the next slide, please. So we'll just talk about tagging a little bit now. So the key pieces that we're improving in tagging is really allowing you to have more flexibility with your tags. So really focusing on being able to do bulk tagging, backdating, and add multiple tags to mobs. So at the moment, one of those key restrictions is you can only add one tag to a mob at one time. So you'll now be able to add multiple tags. And that's kind of that key improvement there. Phil, then if you just jump to the next slide. Then if we look at individual animal tagging, there's been quite a bit of confusion here around tags because the way that we have tags set up at the moment, it doesn't really accurately reflect the tags that you're using on animals on farm. So what we're doing is adding more tag types. So essentially the tag that you add in AgriWebb will accurately and exactly reflect the tag that you add to the animal in the yard. So it'll be really obvious what tag you're adding. Hopefully there won't be any confusion when you need to replace or change tags in the future. And you'll have that really great visual representation of the tag that you're adding. So yeah, that's kind of the key piece that we're working on now. And then the last one is mob record activity. So this has been one of our most popular features that's available for the individual system. And it really allows people to get a full view of the activity of everything that's been happening on their farm. So that means you can jump into an activity list and see what's happened today, what's happened in the last week, what's happened in the last month for every single user on your farm. And then when you jump into any of those details, which are the screenshots you see on the slide here, you get a really rich view of what's happened in that record and a rich summary all throughout the product. People love this because they can pull out their phone, they can pull it up on the desktop, and they can see that consistent view for all of their records throughout the entire product. And again, that's moving towards that consistent system. Being able to see and use AgriWebb the same way between the mob and the individual system. Thanks, Phil. So then if we jump on to what we're working on next, so this is planned when we talk about next, and we are looking at doing all of this work this year. Again, it could change slightly, but this is in our plan and we're working on this at the moment. So again, really looking at the mob improvements. And you can see the list of records that we're working on here. The key benefits you'll see, which I saw come up in the poll that Phil had running just a moment ago, is all of these records will be available on the web and the app. So that's marking, weaning, castrate, spay, and joining. So then all of our records will be available on the web besides movements, but I will talk more about that in a moment. You'll be able to do multi-mob records for all of these. So that means you can add multiple mobs to all of these records, so you're not having to create so many separate records. And you'll also be able to use templates, which is a new concept for the mob system, which means that you can, in the same kind of step, create multiple records at the same time. So we know when you're in the yards and you're seeing animals, you're often doing a number of actions at the same time. So you might be doing a treatment, you might be doing a preg scan, you might be weaning. You can do all of those records in the same action rather than having to save every record individually. So that's a really big step forward in usability. And once we complete all of those records, that will give us auto aging and more of those automatic features. So that's going to be a great step forward, and we're very excited to bring all of those pieces to the mob system. Another big one is feed improvements, which I'll talk about in a little bit more detail there, but that's going to allow us to start working with advantage feeders and others like that. And we'll be doing a little bit more work on a few additional user roles, like I mentioned earlier, and this will be looking at a read-only role. So a little bit different to those map and task only. This is where you'll be able to still see all of the information, but you won't be able to make any changes. A few different scenarios that come up here, maybe wanting to share with other family members that you might not want to be able to edit, but you want to be able to have a good view of what's happening within your operation. And, other scenarios there, but, really being able to control your data, make sure it's not edited and changed, but still giving people access to your AgriWebb account and what you're doing there. So thanks, Phil. If you just jump to the next slide, we'll talk about feed a little bit more and the improvements we're making there. So really what this new feature is going to do is allow us to track feed eaten over time. So this means that the consumption rate from your feeders is going to change as animals are moved in and out of the paddock. So if there's no animals in the paddock, no feed will be consumed from that feeder. If you move additional animals into that paddock, more feed will be consumed. Previously, you would have needed to create a new feed record every day, which we know isn't ideal and is very time consuming. So I think this is going to be pretty exciting for a lot of people and allow you to better track that feed consumption in the paddock. Thanks, Phil. And then just to quickly sum up what we're doing later, we don't have any more detail on this because these are the pieces we're looking at for early next year to kick off. But again, that's kind of bringing to a conclusion a lot of the things Phil talked about with improving the mob system. So particularly with movements. So that will allow us to do movements on the web app, drag and drop on the web app. So being able to, drag mobs and drop them into paddocks on the web. Multi-mob movements, using templates with movements. So being able to drag and drop a mob, but create other records at the same time. We know as you're doing movements, you might also be wanting to record some paddock records like feed on offer. So you'll be able to do all of those in the same action. So that's going to be a big one. And as part of that, we also have some really great usability improvements for the mob customers on the map. You'll be able to group your mobs in more sophisticated ways, I guess. So that means you can break out your little mob icons on the map by age class, sex, breed. So if you are wanting to get a breakdown of what types of animals you have in certain paddocks, you'll be able to do that really easily. You can group them back. So you don't have it broken down and you just see, all the animals as one icon in the paddock, but you do have more flexibility when you want that. And better paddock summaries. So there'll be a more detailed paddock summary and you'll be able to group animals in that paddock summary and then apply actions to them. So if you say click on a paddock that has a couple of different mobs in there, you'll be able to say, okay, just show me all of my lambs and I'm going to apply this record to my lambs. For example. So it just kind of makes using the map easier and you can apply records in better ways from the map. People have probably noticed that last point there under movements. We'll be looking at better drafting and also looking at agistment or contract grazing if you're in the US. So that's going to be a big one to be able to track that properly in AgriWebb at the moment. We know that's been a big pain point. The next point down is the grazing planner. Again, I won't go into too much detail there, but that's going to allow you to plan grazes in advance, integrating with the calendar and really helping, improve those planning features and forward planning within AgriWebb. Like Jess spoke about, we have some work planned with the marketplace. We've got a couple of new integrations planned, including Optiway, AgWorld, and other water providers. Again, not locked in when these will be delivered, but we're working with those companies to see when that can happen. And we're also working on better APIs so people can get data out of the system when they need to. So they're kind of the things that are planned for next year, but we're looking forward to working on those more. We know they're really exciting features. And yeah, that's it. So thank you very much. And I think we'll be passing over to Hamish now.
Right. Thanks, Stacey, and over to you, Ham.
Thanks, Phil. Just wanted to jump on and pass on some useful tips that we commonly have here in support. I've seen a few names that I'm very familiar with, and for all of you that don't know me yet, I'm sure you'll get to know me soon. But these are some of the common things that I often reiterate that to just help run the whole app and portal more smoothly. So the first one and the biggest one I have is around the mobile app, and that is syncing. As you would all know, when you open the app and another colleague or teammate on the farm has done some records, you'd see that blue banner, and it usually will say a few items to sync. It can go all the way up to 99 plus, but the more often you're doing that sync, the less time that sync is going to take and the smoother the app is going to run. So if you do have a sec and you are in good enough mobile service, or you're home for smoko or lunch or something like that, always let that one sync, because it's going to make sure the data and all the animals on your app are as accurate as possible. Another one, a really good one, is to make sure you're doing your records as they happen. So any movements that you're doing, mustering, splitting, anything in the yards, making sure when it's fresh in your mind, you're jumping onto the app and putting those in, just because when you go back for a few weeks later, it can be very hard to remember certain details and things like that. And other records may have happened and might also prevent you from doing it as accurately as you want. Another one is, as you saw, Jess at the start released how much we're constantly working on, fixes and general updates for the app, to make sure that you keep your app up to date through the App Store or the Google Play Store, depending on what device you have. This will make sure that your device runs as smoothly as possible and you have access to our newest updates and features. Some really good resources that are available to you at all times are the Help Center and the AgriWebb Academy. The Help Center is a database of feature articles where you can just type in a keyword or about any problem that you have at the time or a question that you have, and it will come up with 10 to 20 articles of any related words. Hardware, it could be movements, it could be treatments, all those sorts of things. And the AgriWebb Academy is courses and videos that explain how to do certain areas of the app, and it's a bit more of a broader general sentiment about cropping or task management or reporting or something like that. And it'll go through with useful videos that can really provide the visual assistance. Always, if you're in doubt, please reach out to us here in support through the Get Help button on the bottom left of the web app. That's where you can contact support, access the Help Center, go to the AgriWebb Academy, and then in the mobile app, hit on menu and then support as well, and you'll find the same features. You can always chat to us whenever you like and send any details of the problem through. You can call us on our AgriWebb support line, and you can also book in a 30-minute call back for a Zoom or a phone call, which is dedicated time to you. It's a free call, and we're more than happy to step through anything with you there. The other one I'd love to call out there is if you are noticing anything in the yards or in the paddock and you had an idea pop into your head about something that could be very useful on AgriWebb, please feel free to go to our website into the ideas portal and chuck in some feedback there and vote in on other people's ideas there as well. And this, I'd love to just call attention to some useful settings that you might have missed that can greatly enhance your experience. So these first three here, if you have a look on your mobile app and you go to menu and then settings, you can enable GPS tracking, which can help greatly with assigning geolocated things. All of you who have it on would notice that little blue dot that represents you on your farm. Can be very, very helpful for any new employees who might be getting lost or are not quite sure where paddocks are yet or animals are. That one is very helpful. Making sure to enable the background sync in the settings as well, as this will, while you're in the app, it will continually sync records that are happening. And then also show advanced fields. A lot of you would have noticed that when you click on this option, the details in the record will greatly expand. The amount of data that you can enter will increase, and that can help with your desired outcomes in reports and all those sorts of things. Some of the other ones there down the bottom are the settings you can enable on the web app. If you go to account and then farm management, and you go into edit and then settings, you'll see that screen that Jess popped up at the start of this webinar. And you can choose the farm species that you have. You can choose your favorite breeds. So if you're not wanting to filter through the big drop-down list of breeds or search them up, you know that you're a merino operation, that's all you need to see. You can select that one and do all those sorts of things. And another one to call out there is the mob management tags, which can greatly help, as you know, all of you on the mob-based platform with merging and splitting. If you have that set up, you can have that consistency of your 5 or 6 main ones, your pregnants, your empties, your age classes, whatever they might be, blue tags, green tags, anything like that, that's relevant to your operation. You can set that up and make sure that's consistent throughout your whole time with the app. Thanks, Phil.
Pleasure. Heyman, just as you're talking, Janelle asked, can you set advanced as the default?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Through that settings on the mobile app.
Excellent. We've got few minutes left, but we just wanted to answer some of the questions that are coming through on the Q&A and the chat. You'll see there are, within the Q&A, there's a number of them that have been answered already. So if you have a scroll through there, you'll see some interesting ones, but just let me drop through. Martin had a question: how do I import data from my Optiway system into AgriWebb? You can do that today, Martin, by exporting a CSV file of weights from Optiway and then importing it into the individual system. What we're talking to Optiway around is how we can automate that connection between AgriWebb and Optiway through the marketplace and have that data flow into AgriWebb automatically as soon as weights are captured. There's an anonymous question in here: will there be any interaction with selling livestock and the EMBD system? We actually have that available already, so you can create EMBDs from AgriWebb and link them into sale records there. So reach out to support team or check out the help articles if you'd like to see how to do that. Anonymous. It would be great in the future to be able to read the barcode on agricultural chemicals to get batch numbers, etc. We are so desperate to get that. We've been doing a lot of work to find the databases where we can get that information. It's actually really tricky to find it. Even APVMA in Australia don't have that information in a consistent way. So we are continuing to look into that. And we'll definitely be updating people as soon as we've got those databases coming together. Terry had a question: is it possible to use the free MLA version of SIBO Labs to feed into AgriWebb? Not currently, but we are working with SIBO on how trials of SIBO and the feed-based monitor could interact with AgriWebb in the future. Is a GPS setting accurate enough for soil tests, etc.? Yes, Terry, we believe so. And it kind of depends on the GPS in your phone, but typically we've been told they're accurate enough by the groups in sustainability that are doing soil testing. By the way, anyone else from AgriWebb, feel free to chip in on jump in on these ones. Our main problem is cumbersome tag updates, such as a cow comes in with an EID, but missing a VID. Updating with the new VID deletes the EID. Yeah, David, this is one of the big improvements that Stacey just went through in terms of how the individual tags are being updated to really reflect what the physical tags are on animals. There's a little bit too much combining of those things that we did with the initial version of the tagging, but it will be possible to just remove a VID. That would put in an EID, etc., with the new work that is happening at the moment. Also from David: is it possible to have an EID alert come up when an animal comes through the race? We will be building out that type of alerting system that could be driven off rules such as filters. It could be based on labels that come in, or drafting criteria. So that's something else that we'll be getting to. Can we link the dam and progeny easily at the moment?
I think, Phil, I was just looking at that one. It depends when and where you're mothering up, I think. It's not super straightforward. But if you are using the VID to mother up in the paddock, you can do that. But yeah, there is some work need to be done to make that more straightforward. But Debbie, if you wanted to send a message to support, or we can reach out to find out exactly how you are mothering up, we could help you with that directly.
Thanks, Stacey. Of course, popular thread. Tom, is it possible to integrate farming forecaster rain records into AgriWebb? We are looking at a number of integrations around weather. So in the future, yes, I'd say that it'd be possible. We'd need to work with them on how that integration looks. Are there ways to record worm egg count tests for mobs? Not currently. It's another record that we know we used to have in AgriWebb that was removed at one point, which we would be looking to bring back as after the current mob upgrade pieces are done. Ability to take photos within task creation. There are some small projects going on in the background of our research for things such as that. Watch this space, Chris. We'll have something to talk about soon on that side. Last one from David. Instead of tone from iPad for weight obtained. Yeah, there's some individual management live session kind of quality of life things will be and configuration are things that we so I should say like set up for a session are things we're looking at. What gets read out, what are the pieces of information that appear on the screen, etc. It's a bit of a rapid fire. Are people happy if I keep going? Amber, I'm getting in trouble. I'll keep going. Is there a way to see what actions are being synced? Oh, great question. We are currently rebuilding sync, so I'll raise that with the engineering team on that one. There's some really cool stuff, both to speed up and speed up how long it takes to sync, but also change how we sync and what levels of information keep going up. We're just going to wrap up a few more. Is there a way of seeing how many times a cow has come up dry over a 2-year period? That's a conversation I had with someone just this morning. So we've got the data there. It is something that we're looking to expose both from a reporting point of view and also within the fertility report for individuals and also as a part of a live session. So yeah, Amanda, that one will be coming. I think Dave might have been touching on that as well. Notifications for team members went from Chris, another one, notifications for or from team members when tasks are assigned to them directly on their phone rather than logging into the app. Push notifications is kind of like a term for that, something else we've had a lot of feedback on. It's one of the top rated kind of items we have. I think it might be sitting below photos on tasks. So it's something we're very aware of, Chris, and we'll be looking to get that one as well. It's probably kind of going to come after some of the mob upgrade pieces that we just stepped through. Yeah, lots of questions coming through. I'll do one more. Be nice to edit some labels on individual animals. I don't need tattoo, but it'd be nice to track genomic sample number. Yeah, labels are something that we'll be working on around the time of the mob upgrade project as well, to kind of coincide with enterprises and management groups, Debbie. One ID that we will be introducing kind of officially is the DNA sample ID. So that will come, that genomic piece will come soon, even though we're not drifting too much further into studs, the ability to link those two and track the TSU in AgriWebb will be there soon. So yeah, we'll pause there. Thank you so much for all the questions and for spending so much time with you. We know that that time is really valuable. I hope you can see there's some really big things and lots of small things we're working on at AgriWebb and within the product at the moment. It's really important to us that we're building the best possible software we can to help you guys run and improve what you're doing on farm. We're working really hard to get there. There's a lot of new stuff. It takes us a while, but we do know that with all the feedback, we really want to be able to respond to that and make sure that we're building this out. So we're really excited about the direction we're heading and the product's heading. We hope you guys are too. Please keep those channels open with us, whether it's through the support team, through the ideas portal. Feel free to reach out to me, the product team, support team directly. And this is the first webinar we've done, but we've started to get back out onto the road to do these types of sessions and actually walk through some workshops as well. So we'll let you guys know when we're out on the road. And also we want to continue these, whether it's quarterly or every 6 months, to make sure that we're telling you all the stuff that is happening. Excuse me, that's happening with folks. So thank you so much for joining today. This isn't the last time we'll have a chance to chat, but yeah, really appreciate again the time. Emma just posted we will be at the field days. We'll be out in Wagga at the end of August, and we'll be back with the product team. Will be back around Hamilton or that area in October as well. So we'll keep you guys posted. And again, thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Bill, I did just see someone say, are we coming to Sheepvention? Amber, I don't know if you can answer that.
We are definitely coming to Sheepvention. There's a bit of a contingent down there from the support team, so and have the same information we've just stepped through. So please, if there are any questions about roadmap or things or how to use things, please come to the tent and let us know. Okay, thank you guys. And let's see, Amber, we might ask you to stop the webinar.